First of all, thank you for being here. I get excited anytime I'm around coaches. I think that, I'm a product of coaching. My dad was a coach. I grew up on the back of a blocking sled when I was a little tyke. But I think it's really important, and where I value you guys maybe as much as anybody is I think you're the most important influencers in our country today. I think a coach has more influence on the direction of our country than any politician, more than even school teachers. I think they impact kids to go change the world. And that's mainly what I'm going to be talking about today. I recently moved to Austin, Texas. I'd been a California kid. I'd retired as a 49er in 07. My family and I stayed in the Bay Area. And for the last 10 years, we've been in the Bay Area. And we went to Austin, Texas. And for the first time in my life, my wife said, let's build a man cave. And let's put all your memorabilia up. Now, 14 years is a long time to play in the NFL, and then you take your college career, your high school stuff, so you can imagine the amount of crap that had been in storage units for so long. Well, one of the things was she wanted to do all my jerseys up on the wall. Now, when you're a journeyman quarterback and teams keep cutting you, you accumulate a lot of jerseys. So, and it was expensive getting these suckers framed. But, so for the first time I got this man cave, and I got the 5 TVs so I watch more Saturday football than I do Sunday football. But I got to watch all the games, and I got the Super Bowl trophy, and I have my favorite pictures, and all the awards I've won, and all that stuff. And then this one wall has all my jerseys. As I was going through the jerseys, it was really a weird experience, because each jersey all of a sudden triggered a bunch of memories. You got to understand something about me. I am not a guy that lives or identifies with my past and my career. So I never lay in bed and think about, ooh, when I played so-and-so in 2000, or the games don't roll like I'm on a Rolodex. It was a great period of my life, something I value tremendously. What came out of it was spectacular. But it's not what I think about all the time. But putting the jerseys up forced me to think about some things. Because like anything, I put my high school jersey up. And this is a lot of hair ago. This is 1988 when I had a mullet. And I still have my mom stitched up one of the shoulders with pink thread on this gray jersey, and I'm putting this jersey up, and it was amazing the memories that came back. Here's the biggest memory that came back. 1988, we're playing our rival. I grew up in a coastal community in Northern California, and we're playing our rival. Our high school had never beat this high school, and my stepdad was the high school coach at my high school for years before I went there. And this was our nemesis. Not only did they beat us, they would typically crush us. Well, my junior year, we're down 21-0 at halftime. We come back in the second half. I throw 3 touchdowns. It's 21-20. The head coach puts me off to the sideline, and I still have this picture of us both kneeling down. And he says, Trent, you got us here. You decide, kick the extra point or go for 2 to win. Well, what's a 17-year-old knucklehead going to say? We're going for 2, right? So we're going to go for 2 and beat this high school for the first time ever. And we call, before John Gruden started calling it Spire 2Y Banana, it was just called Fire Pass. And we call Fire Pass. Our best player is going to get the ball in the flat. Tight end's going to hard inside release, get the Sam to hold with them. We're going to take the Z. We're going to pick inside. Fullback's going to be wide open in the flat. Sure enough, I come up off the fake. Best player wide open. Skip him the ball. Totally choke. I mean, as big a choke job as I've ever done in my life. But that's the memory that came back when I'm putting up my high school jersey. So then we're putting up my college jersey. I went to Fresno State, again, a lot of hair ago. And I'm putting up the college jersey, and the first memory that hits me is 1991. I'm a redshirt freshman. I'm the backup quarterback. And we're playing at New Mexico State, about week 6, I think it is. And great starting quarterback ahead of me. His name was Mark Barsotti, wonderful player. Breaks his leg halfway through the game. And they throw me in there. I couldn't call a play. I was so nervous. I was shaking in the huddle. I would take, it was supposed to be a 5-step drop. I'd take 3 steps and just get the heck out of Dodge and start running. Didn't read a defense the whole game. I mean, it was a train wreck first experience for a quarterback. I was completely unprepared. I hadn't prepared as the starter. I had kind of gotten lazy. I was more concerned with, the college life than I was football. But why was this the memory that was coming back? I'm choking in high school. I'm unprepared in college. What's the next memory that's going to flood my mind? So I think about we're playing BYU in 1992. Oh, I know why, because I have two college jerseys. I have my college jersey, then I have my retired college jersey. My jersey got retired at Fresno, so I have my college retired jersey. And it makes me think about 1992 against BYU. BYU was really good back then. This is right after Ty Detmer. They're a powerhouse. We're new to the conference. We go to Provo to play them, and we ran a bunch of deep in routes back then. The old 428, constantly running weak side and strong side digs by our perimeter receivers. And studied the film, was more prepared this time, go in, and all of a sudden, the first two digs I throw over the game, the safety's pick. Just hits him right in the chest. And I'm going, what the heck's going on? It was the first time I'd ever seen quarters coverage. They had never shown quarters coverage on film, and we go to Provo, and because all the outside crossing routes we ran, the deep digs, they line up in quarters, and those safeties without an inside clear, they're just jumping number one on both sides, and it's hitting them in the chest. And it was the most frustrating game I'd ever played in college because I think it's cover two. When you're a sophomore in college, you've never seen quarters, you think it's a split safety look. Man, this is cover two. You should come right underneath the safety. Instead, these safeties are jumping these digs. So again, why in the heck, I tell my wife as we're putting on the jersey, why in the heck am I thinking about choking in high school, being unprepared my freshman year in college, and then throwing 4 picks against BYU my sophomore year? Then we start getting into my NFL jerseys. And I think about year 2000, I'm in Baltimore, and we're putting up the Super Bowl jersey, and this is probably the greatest memory of my college career. It starts as a horrible memory. We're playing Tennessee. They're the best team in the AFC at the time, and we're in their place, and we play a great football game. All 3 phases, really playing well. We get the ball. We're really running out the clock. We're kind of in a situation to go down and kick a field goal to win. And we're kind of on that fringe area. I think we're like the 28-yard line where we still want to get another first down to make the kick easier. And there's enough time. There's like 2:30 that you might also want to go in and score too. And we run the double slants to the weak side. We call double slants to the weak side with a strong side stick. And I get to the line of scrimmage, and Brandon Stokely's my inside receiver, and the nickel player lines up way inside of Brandon. So what are you going to do if you're predetermining a coverage? You think you're throwing the outside slant, right? Inside slant's going to eat up the nickel. Outside guy's going to jump inside the corner. 8-yard completion, move the chains, off we go. And I drop back, and I look right at the nickel player, and he bluffs me. He starts inside, and he jumps outside, and I throw it right to him. And he runs it back for a touchdown. So we've gone from going to win the game to all of a sudden I have pissed the game away. I've single-handedly lost it. So again, why when I'm putting up these jerseys am I thinking about all this bad stuff? Because in the same time frame as I'm putting up the jerseys, here's what else I'm thinking about. That the next year, 1989, when I was in high school, we went to their place, North Monterey County, and we ripped them a new one. And we beat them for the first time in my school's history. And I threw a game-winning touchdown. And in 1991, just 5 weeks after I was unprepared and was a total train wreck as the quarterback after our quarterback got hurt, we won the conference championship. We beat Jeff Garcia in the conference championship game, and I ran 2 touchdowns and threw 2 touchdowns and played almost flawlessly. And I learned how to prepare. And in '93, we went back to Provo, Utah to play him again. The year after, I had thrown 4 interceptions, and I threw for 450 and 4 touchdowns. And gashed them. And the next series, after I had thrown the interception to lose the game, I took our team 80 yards and threw a game-winning touchdown pass with 15 seconds left on the clock. I tell the story because as I was growing up in football, I had incredible coaches. And never once can I remember when I had something bad happen to me that a coach ever told me it was a failure. The language that was used in my career was, it was a temporary setback. that with every bad thing that happens to you as a football player, it's how you process it. And I processed it as a temporary setback. Recently, I was challenged by a mentor in my life to define moments of my life in one word. Have you guys ever gone through this exercise? It's a big thing around the new year. A lot of leaders will tell you to define your new year in one word. Well, this mentor told me to go back through the course of my life and to define periods of my life in one word. So I started doing this exercise for my football life. I was like, golly, this is tough. I was the third team all-league quarterback my senior year in high school. The first team guy is a guy named Brian Murphy. He was 5'9". Now, I looked like this in high school, believe it or not. Didn't have this. The rest was pretty much the same. Had a little more of this. But I was 6'4", 235, ran 4.6, could throw a football 80 yards in the air. I could do it all. And I was the third team high school quarterback. I went on. It's a pretty fun recruiting story. I was being recruited by nobody as a quarterback. Everybody's recruited me as a tight end, outside backer type player. And Fresno came in to watch the quarterback they're recruiting, ironically from this North Monterey County school, to watch him play basketball against us. And they had offered him, and they were just going, senior year, follow-up visit. Hey, I think he had his official coming up in a couple weeks. And I went for 44 and dunked 5 times on him. And the coach came down on the court after the game and said, here's why I was here. His name's Rich Olson. Many of you have probably run across him at some point. Rich Olson comes down and he says, listen, son, we came here to talk to Todd. I haven't talked to our head coach, but you coming to campus this week, we got a full ride for you at Fresno State to play quarterback. So I went from third team all-league to playing in a basketball game to get a scholarship at Fresno. I went from the 4th team red shirt quarterback knucklehead to having my name on the stadium. Heisman Trophy candidate, All-American, Player of the Year. Started as a 4-string red shirt knucklehead that was crying in the parking lot after that train wreck game in '91. I was a 6th pick of the NFL draft to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. From there, became the worst player in the National Football League, and I'm not kidding. I was the worst player in the NFL for like 2.5, 3 years. Not one. Historically bad as a player to a Pro Bowl a year later. I went from a discarded quarterback in Tampa, where they literally ran me out of town after 6 years, was being booed at the Outback Steakhouse when they said, Dilfer, table for 2. The entire restaurant stands up and boos me and my wife out of an Outback. To that same year, coming back to Tampa as a Baltimore Raven and hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. You can tell I have a face for radio, and yet I did 9 years of Monday Night Football, pre and post game. So I started going through this, and I'm like, what does this mean? How do I put this in one word? Dysfunctional? I don't know what this word is. And I came up with grit. Grit is passion and perseverance to a long-term goal. It's a very trendy word right now. Very few know what it really is. But I wasn't born with grit. I wasn't born with the ability to not look at mistakes as failures, instead looking at them as setbacks. So how, through my story of football, why was I able to develop such great grit and take bad and turn it into good? Why didn't failure ever define me? Or setbacks ever define me in my career? Because I had coaches I had coaches that nurtured this into me. I had coaches that, whether they knew it or not, were very careful with the words they used to speak to me. I had coaches because I was looking to the coach to say, what now, coach? Who am I? What do I do? This hurts. Where do I move forward from this? And they had the wisdom to nurture a self-speak in me that allowed me to view mistakes as temporary setbacks instead of failures, to develop a deep-rooted grit inside of me. I think in football today, there's a couple lies. I'm going to end my talk before I do Q&A with the two biggest lies in football, but I think this would be in there too. Football has been put into the nature bucket. You're good if by natural selection you are supposed to be good. That's bullshit. Football is about nurturing. If you are in a seat today and you're coaching, you're by definition a nurturer. Nurture greater than nature. See, a coach has this incredibly powerful ability to shape a kid's vision of him or herself. Power, burden, opportunity, I don't care what you call it. But the words you say and how you treat your kids is going to paint a vision for what they are. It's going to determine their self-speak. Billy Graham's one of the greatest humans that's ever been on this planet. And he's famous for saying this: the two most powerful words in our culture today are coach says. Meaning, whatever coach says trumps all the other inputs in his life. Now let's dig into that for a second, because I have 3 kids, and I've been told, well, no, it's the media, it's parents, it's social media, it's teachers. Not according to one of the wisest men ever, and my perspective, if I've seen the landscape, I would agree with him, that what coach says has way more weight than what Sally Jane or Johnny White Sox says. And I know it means more than what parents say because I've lived it. And I get, the child shows up in the passenger seat, how was it, sweetie? Well, coach said this. And that's their perspective, coach says. Coach says has incredible power. I think it's because, and I know this was true with me, as players, as athletes, we're trying to be part of something bigger than ourselves. The world tells us it's about you, it's about you, it's about you. How do you look? What do you do? What do you achieve? But instinctively, we want to be part of something bigger. We want to be part of a tribe. Well, the coach determines your ranking in that tribe. The coach determines where you fit into that tribe. The coach determines where you feel comfortable in that tribe. Because the team, the tribe can say, you're no good, you're this, you're that, you're lazy. And the coach will say, no, you're a grinder. You have great grit. We value you. You're part of this. And that trumps whatever the negative influencers are saying. Social media might say, you're a 1-star, you're this, you're not that good, you're not pretty enough, you're not big enough. And coach can say, no, we need you so bad as the gunner. We need you so bad in the drills for practice. Your leadership brings value to this team. So coach says, those words that a coach has trumps all these other inputs that are coming in these young people's lives. And I hear this all the time when it comes to like positive coaching, positive teaching. Well, you lose discipline. You lose your edge. You lose your authority. I'd put that in a big bucket of lies too, because you know what you gain? You gain respect. You gain the ability to connect with a young person and shape the rest of their life. Because the majority of them are just going to be part of a tribe for a little while. But they're going to take those lessons they learned in that tribe, and it's going to determine how they parent. It's going to determine how they move forward in life. And if they become a lawyer or a CEO or work at Walgreens or whatever it is, it's going to determine how they interact with the people around them. It's going to determine how they handle adversity within their marriage. It's going to have a massive impact. Your words on that player is going to have a massive impact for the rest of their life. And then those people are going to become influencers, and they're going to take your words and how you taught them, and they're going to impact those people in their lives. And you see how it builds on each other? Do you see why Billy Graham said the two most important words in America today are coach says? Because it builds and it grows. I came up with my own personal coaching philosophy, and I'm not a traditional coach. I speak at clinics and camps and conventions all over the country to people that have way more pelts on the wall than me when it comes to coaching. I have chosen not to do it because I feel like I can have more impact in the world I'm in now. But I too have come up with a coaching philosophy. I call it your awesome but. You're awesome, ... but. When you start with affirmation as a coach, as an influencer, when the first thing out of your mouth is affirming what a young person has done, and sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's hard to find anything they've done that's good. But when you take the time to find it, their heart and their ears and their mind now opens up, which allows you the but. Hey, Trent, your effort this week in practice was awesome. You brought it every day. But for some reason, we're not seeing it transfer over to the game. Hey, Trent, I love the fact that on that 3-step drop, you were on balance, everything was good, you look perfect. But we got to do a better job not predetermining the coverage so you don't throw it to the other team and they run into the end zone. Hey, Johnny White Sox, I'm so proud of you, man. You get out there for pre-practice, you go through your functional movement, you're all locked in, you're doing everything we've asked you to do. But we got to get you to lower your hips a little bit in contact. We got to get you to finish. We got to work on that. I'll tell you what, they heard the second part a lot easier because you started with the first part. What's amazing too is how many of you in this room have kids? I'm hoping good. Now this part of the speech works. How many of your kids are at some level an athlete or a performer or ambitious with their grades or whatnot? I figured. I think one of the biggest impacts my journey has helped me with is helping parents and myself through the parenting of an athlete. Because the same principle works in parenting, your awesome butt. But as parents, we go through 4 stages of parenting. We go through the caretaker phase, right? Where you're changing poopy diapers and you're freaking out when you can't hear them breathe for like 3 seconds in the crib, to when you're picking up crap on the floor, they throw off their high chair, right? You're caretaking. Then you transition into what I call cop. Then you're a cop. You're a full-time policing their activity. Well, then the chunk of your parenting is life coaching. It's coach, but not the coach that we're all sitting in this room for. It's the life coaching. That is constant teaching opportunities to try to get your kid to better understand how to do life well. And then when you're old and crusty like me, then you move into the consultant phase. And that's kind of when they go to college. They really don't want you to coach them anymore, but sure, they want you on standby when they have a problem to consult them. My journey was interesting. We had 4 kids, actually. We lost our son when he was 5 and a half. He was our second. But the girls, as they've grown up, Maddie's now 21. She's my oldest. She plays beach volleyball at Pepperdine. She was a high school American volleyball player, went to Notre Dame out of high school. Didn't have a great indoor experience. Body kind of broke down. Has now transferred to the beach. She's on the number 2 ranked sand volleyball team in the country. My middle daughter, Tori, is a setter for TCU. And then my youngest, Delaney, who's 15, as we speak, actually, I should probably check my phone, I might have a text. As we speak, is playing at a national qualifier in Dallas with the 18s team, because she's that kind of good. I like to brag on my kids, but with all that comes a massive challenge as a coach parent. And that challenge is this, that we always have our coaching instincts going. If you're in a chair here, you are a coach. Your instincts are to coach. And just by the coaching, but just by the parenting journey, you are going to be coaching from like 7th grade to your senior year, life coaching. Here's the problem. Your kid doesn't want you sport coaching from 7th grade to their senior year, and you're like, no, that blows my mind because I'm so much better than the coach that they have, or I have so much to offer as a sports coach that could help my kid in guitar, help my kid in volleyball, or help my kid in softball, or help my kid in football, or dance, or cheerleading, whatever it is. Like, I can fix them. They can sit in the chair when I pick them up and I can go, God, I can fix you. I have the answers for you. Here's the problem. They don't want it. You know what they want? Hey, sweetie, you look so pretty. God, I love picking you up from school. You need help on your homework tonight? Now, they've just come out of the gym. They have boogers in their nose. Their hair's disheveled. They've just ran wind sprints then to practice. And you're thinking, oh, I can dive in. I can help them get tougher, develop more grit, have perspective. What'd you work, like your instincts are, what'd you work on today? Did you get better? How are your feet? Did you play with better leverage? Were you tougher? Instead, boy or girl, they just want you to have a parent. So I came up with this great tool, fell into it with Maddie. So as a bald guy, you always have to have a hat. I have a hat with me all the time. Strapped to my backpack, on the dash of my car, right? Can't get this beautiful dome burnt. So one day, Maddie gets in the car, and she just had a tough practice. And I can tell she was hurting. I could tell she needed the ball coach to come out. But I was also wise enough to not volunteer the information. Because Maddie was really like, she would listen to me when she asked for it, but if she wasn't asking for it, she just wanted me to be dad. So I look up on my dash and I see this hat. And I go, hey, Maddie, I got a game, let's play. I said, we have a really good relationship about me not jumping into what's going on with volleyball when you get in the car. But I've sensed there's times where I want to say something, but I don't want to shove it down your throat. Or there's times you want something from me, but you don't know how to get it from me. She goes, that's true. I said, what if I ask permission to put on the coaching hat? And as soon as the hat goes on, I'm no longer dad. That I can coach you. And that might mean some hard stuff. I might have to be a truth teller sometimes. She goes, well, can I ask you to put on the coach hat when I need you to coach me up? And I said, yeah. She goes, deal. And it's been amazing watching my kids grow up in the sports world and how often they will ask me to put on the coach hat. Or when I feel them hurting or something's going on or they're in a dysfunctional situation, to be able to ask their permission to put on the coach hat and really dig deep into their soul on how I can help them. See, think about as a coach how much time you spend game planning. How much time you spend the next X's and O's, building the next drill, how you're going to train your coaches, whatever. Think about the amount of time spent in that. What if you took the same amount of time and planned how you messaged your players? What if you spent the same amount of time and calculated the words you were going to use? What if you spent the same amount of time and developed a coach philosophy that allowed your words to positively impact young people, knowing that that was going to be paid forward for years to come? Think of the possibilities if you devoted as much energy into choosing your words and to having a message and making sure that your coach says has lifelong impact. I think you'll answer that question, or you'll decide that once you answer a question. I think this is the question that every coach needs to answer today. What I didn't tell you about what I'm doing these days is I study coaches. I started doing it in 2000. I started taking football coaches and I started studying them. And I've moved to other sports. And I just relentlessly study coaches, good, bad, and different. And in football especially, here's what I've seen. I've seen a massive transition from the time my dad would wake up and put on those bike shorts, crew socks, throw that whistle around his neck with pride, and go out there and teach these high school offensive linemen to play with leverage and keep their feet moving and get their head in the right position and push that sled all over the place with his little stepson on the back. And every coach I knew growing up was cut from the same cloth. They coached it because they were passionate about it. They were passionate about helping young people get better. Well, somewhere around 15-ish years ago, that passion started getting traded in for ambition. And now you have two schools. You have your passion coaches and your ambition coaches. And I think you need to ask yourself a very important question. What am I? Am I a passion coach, or am I an ambition coach? Because if you are an ambition coach, good for you. Go make a bunch of money, go win a bunch of games. Know that you're going to leave a shitload of shrapnel on the sidewalk. And that shrapnel are kids. And it's also going to determine how you talk. It's going to determine your coach says. Because if it's about you, those kids are going to know it's about you. And the words you're going to say are going to be said to make you look better. But if you're a passion coach, then you are going to choose your words carefully. Then you are going to care more about the future of those kids you're influencing than your future. I think it's a question every single football coach has to ask. Every coach has to ask themselves. I think the two biggest lies, I said I'd end with this, the two biggest lies in football today are this. Number one is that the goal is winning. The goal is not winning. The goal is to have a winning process. They have the same results. The road to it is very different. It's one of the greatest lies you'll get as a coach. We coach to win. No, you say that because it sounds cool. And you read it in a book. And the depth of your football knowledge is what you read in a book. Those are the people that say winning is everything. A winning process will equal winning, and it'll change the world while you're doing it. The second biggest lie is that the biggest risk and danger in football today is player safety. That is a lie. The greatest risk in football today is the mental and emotional safety of those people playing it. The physical risk is real. The physical danger is real. It pales in comparison to the emotional and psychological damage that coaches are doing in this country. It pales in comparison. Half the kids don't have enough athleticism to even get hurt playing football. But they all have vulnerable hearts and minds. And a coach's words are going to shape the emotional and mental health of that kid. I love that the game is getting safer. I love it. Unfortunately, the messaging is about their physical health. The messaging should be about their mental and emotional health. If you don't believe me, here's one part of my life that maybe I have that you don't. I'm now removed, and I'm now watching my ex-teammates, and I'm watching their kids have massive emotional and psychological issues. One of my best friends in football has tried to commit suicide a few times. He's practically dead. It's not CTE. It's what's happened to him in his journey and what was said to him and how his identity was wrapped up in those words that a coach said. Coach says the most powerful words in our country today. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think I went too long because my Q&A just went down from 20 minutes to 10 minutes. So I will take as many questions as you want. I am as vulnerable as they come, as transparent. I answer pretty much everything. Feel free. Yeah, right over there. Great. I'll throw some names out there. I'm not going to give you a list because somebody inevitably is recording this, and it'll get, well, Trent thinks that so-and-so. I think Dabo Swinney's as good a coach as there is in all football today. I think Dabo has an incredible challenge of dealing with the highest level intensity of a program, recruiting, all the dangers that go with that, and having a massive amount of integrity in the process. I've talked to a lot of his players that have played for him, both as stars and as walk-on practice guys. And they say the way the staff treats them, the culture, everything about it is A+. I think Nick's a great coach, Nick Saban. He does it maybe a little differently, but there's a great deal of respect. He's obviously, winning games, but I think he builds the winning process, which equals winning games. I think Jeff Tedford, who I played for, he went through a dark period there, but I think he's one of the better ones. The guy goes on and on and on. I mean, I spend the majority of my offseason, pretty much from here on out, I'll spend my spring coaching coaches to coach quarterbacks and Nike camps and studying coaches.
Coach, this is Elsie Barnett, Dallas, Texas, Wilma Hutchins High School. My question for you has to do with, I coach it there in the city. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the emotional and mental stability of our kids. Our kids are dealing with a tremendous amount. So speak to these coaches that deal with kids of that nature that have to coach from a perseverance perspective, yes, more so than an athletic perspective.
And it's a much greater challenge when you're dealing with an inner city kid that has some other stuff that's leading into 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, right? Or the weight room or the classroom. I totally understand this. And I've been accused of being an idealist. And it's probably true. I try to come from a very idealist standpoint because I think we all should dream to reach a certain thing. There's practicalities at that level that you're having to reach a kid a different way. I think that's where the awesome but comes in. Okay, I think that with any kid, no matter what they're going through, and I had a lot of teammates that came from that background, and what I saw was, yes, there has to be an iron fist sometime. Yes, there has to be discipline. Yes, there has to be expectations. But that doesn't mean it can't start with something awesome. And then they're going to want to prove to you that there's more awesome in them. So if you can look so deep and so hard for the one piece of affirmation on the front end, and like I said, sometimes it's brutal. With kids, there's sometimes I look to my kids, I'm like, there's nothing good I see about you. How can I come up with anything awesome? You're literally freaking out, and I don't see anything good, but I gotta find something good. It's digging for that good to open up their hearts, their minds, their ears, to then hear the iron fist, hear the discipline, because you're gaining respect as you go through that. That would be my answer. Red, okay, both of you back to back, black shirt, then red shirt. Yep. I can hear and I can repeat the question if you want.
White areas, and I've heard horrible things that coaches have said to kids. I had one coach said, "You talk to me like that, I'm going to hang you from the fence." And another time, a coach said to a player, "Your parents raised you to be a pussy." And yeah, I had to walk away from both of those coaching situations. This runs across wealth, race, ethnicity, whatever. How do we get rid of that? Because it's toxic, and I've heard coaches say, "Oh, I'm just old school. You know, like that's just who I am, that's what I do." And administratively, this stuff gets tolerated. The reason why I walked away is because one time the admin did nothing despite parent complaints, and another time the head coach, because it was an assistant, was just like, that's who he is. So, like, how do we get rid of that from the game?
One coach at a time. I think we're going into a period of time, you know, Mark's here, administrators are changing. There'll be less tolerance. I think changing the narrative, one of the biggest things, so when I was asked to speak, when you're a platform speaker, you sit down and you, okay, what's the one, I always say this, what's the one thing you want them to hear? Because honestly, you guys got about 3% of that. Studies show that a platform speech, about 3 to 10% is actually digestible, no matter who's speaking. So I always build my talks around what's the one or two things they're gonna hear. And I hope what you heard is that the physical risk and danger is not the biggest problem in football. It's the emotional and mental. Now, I think the narrative could be shared. You want to change it? Then change the narrative. Yes, football has risk. There's physical risk, but there's emotional and mental risk too, and it's all on the coaches. Start sharing that narrative, see what happens. Because now that gives administrators, decision makers, the ability to police it. Right? They're freaking out every day about the dangers of football because the lawsuits, the CT, all these different conversations make them get the hair on their arms to stand up with the same type of urgency, realizing that their student athletes from junior high to college are being emotionally and psychologically damaged also, or built up. Again, this isn't a negative thing. There are incredible programs that are playing safe football and building young men. Change the narrative. Yeah.
Hey, Justin Wilson from Indianapolis. Thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate and value hearing what you had to say. I have a son that's going to be a freshman next year, another one that's going to be in third grade.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Outside of work and my family, football is pretty much all I do, right? Yeah. But I struggle with the dilemma of whether or not, if the opportunity should present itself later, if I would even want them to play college football, given the current culture and the perceivably expletive situation that exists with the amount of revenue that's generated from the sport compared to what the players get out of it because of the small percentage that actually go on to play at the professional level. So I'm just interested, as much time as you spend with high school players that are in these prime positions to go on and play college, what's your position on that current culture and what we should do to correct it?
Yeah, I don't want to be the person that goes on and says football is the greatest thing in the world, everybody should play it. And I don't want to be the guy that says you should never play football. Yeah, I mean, it's an individual choice. You got to weigh the risk versus the reward. I hear your question of what is the risk versus the reward, maybe, and that will help maybe make your decision. Yeah. Listen, I think football is the greatest game ever invented to teach life lessons. If my son was alive, he'd be 19 this year. He'd be playing football most likely if it was his choice. I've never been the parent. In fact, I had my first parent-coach meeting of my parenting life 2 weeks ago and was asked by the coach. So I've never been the parent that talks to coaches. I just don't think it's our place, or administrators. But I do think you have the power as a parent to choose the program based on certain factors. I would not let my kid play if it was a physically, emotionally, or mentally damaging situation. That if that coach, that the main voice wasn't being regulated, at that point, it no longer is worth it. Because there's other sports that could train the same things, right? I guess that's the best way I can answer, but I hate this narrative that football is bad. I hate it. It keeps me up at night. Because there's so much good about football, and there's so much good about the people sitting in these chairs, and I do this all over the country. For the most part, the coaches are good. The messaging is good. People are trying to learn. They're trying to make it better. They're trying to help young people. I want my kids part of that. But if there's one of those isolated situations and you use your pedigree to recognize that it's not good, then no longer is the game worth it. The revenue thing, I don't get caught up in that. Listen, I was going to junior college, or I was going to go play tight end at Cal. Those are my two options. Fresno gave me an incredible opportunity to come play quarterback for them. They made a ton of money off of me and have ever since. Good for them. They deserve it. I hate this Twitter war of people I really respect, by the way, in the media, that every chance they get, they take a shot at the NCAA about how they're leveraging kids for their brand. Now, they're giving kids a heck of an opportunity. So I don't get too caught up in that one.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, sorry I have long-winded answers too. I'm the worst.
Coach Eric Thomas, Lee Summit High School in Missouri, Kansas City. I'm going to change the gear on you just a little bit here, and I know you work with a lot of young quarterbacks. Had the pleasure of you working with mine recently, Drew Lock. But what's one thing?
One of my all-time favorites.
What's one thing that young quarterbacks, developing quarterbacks in high school, if you had one thing that you would not leave the page unturned on, what would that one thing be?
Their eyes. What they're looking at. Because that encompasses all your XO, right? Your training of them. It encompasses the pictures that are happening pre-snap to post-snap. The ability to discipline your eyes as a quarterback and have the right voices telling you what to discipline them to. The rest is super easy. I speak at more quarterback conventions you can possibly imagine. I can literally fix a quarterback's technique in 5 minutes. It's the easiest, the biggest, it's so easy, okay? So I can teach any coach to fix it. That's not that hard. It's very simple. Have your base just outside your shoulders. It's ground force becomes rotational force, comes out the finger. How do you generate the most ground force? How are you efficient enough with your upper body stroke that all that energy is coming out? And limited movements are the best movements and most repeatable movements. So if they're simple movements, accuracy comes with simple movements. Go back in the history of time, look at the most accurate quarterbacks in the history of football. Simple movements. Don't make it too complex. The left arm doesn't do squat. It actually sits inside basically because it's a limited movement. The ball gets in the same position of every great quarterback there's ever been. It goes up with a hip release. It doesn't go up. Wrong. If you're teaching it, you're wrong. It goes here, it goes up. Now you're matched up. The nose of the ball goes to the ear. As you push from the ground, as the hip fires, the ball loads. Now you're efficient, now you're accurate. Get it on tape, you can change every quarterback you ever touch, but you can't change their eyes unless you know you have the expertise to teach them what to actually be looking at. And you can't judge what their eyes are seeing until you're looking at it and studying it and evaluating it. Until you have the respect of your quarterback to actually tell you what he was looking at, because I lied my ass off. Right? Did you see that safety? Oh yeah, I saw that safety. I knew I could beat him with the ball. Never saw that safety. Then I got Mike Holmgren that every conversation was about the eyes and Trent, I gotta trust you. It's okay if you were wrong, but let's move forward. So their eyes. The technique stuff, there are great quarterback trainers all over the country. Hopefully I've had my mark in that the last 7 years training them. That is, it's important. It's super, super important. It's like golf, right? You just can't be a great competitor and be on the PGA Tour. You just can't be a great competitor and control the ball, have command of the ball. But we make too much of the complexity of throwing a football, right? It is really simple movements. It's basic biomechanics. Ground force equals rotational force comes out the finger. How do you generate ground force? Pretty simple. How do you turn it into rotational force? How is it matched up to the ball so that energy comes out of the finger? That leads to accuracy. But the eyes are so, that's the biggest, that's why I'll just give you one more on my soapbox. All you guys doing shotgun stuff, right? What are my eyes doing? So every picture here changes. You were good looking, now you're ugly. So if you're teaching this, you're teaching it wrong. And you're somebody's saying, well, Peyton Manning does that. No, they don't. They do this. Level eyes. Teach them to level their eyes at from the time they go back, whether it's shotgun or under center, to the time they come back, when they move left, when they duck right. If the eyes are level, they're going to see the pictures better. Simplest change you can make in training your quarterbacks will make the world a difference.
We have our last question, all the way in the back of the room.
I missed our long-winded answer. Yeah.
Trent, thanks so much for being here. Eric Smith, Raleigh, North Carolina. Recently from Northern California. My daughter's finishing up high school in Northern California at Aptos High School.
It's my high school.
Trent, yeah, you're living proof that you can demand toughness and be hard on kids while loving them through the process. So appreciate your words today. I wanted to know if there was a turning point for you with these philosophies and becoming a transformational coach, Trent. Maybe it was being a parent. Can you share a little bit about that? Was there a turning point for you?
It was a process. I was pretty broken at the end of my career, physically, mentally. It would take too long to tell you the story. A lot of stuff from losing my son resurfaced later, hours of counseling, great mentors in my life, yada, yada, yada. When I got involved with Elite 11, my second year, I spent a lot of time with Yogi Roth and Michael Gervais. Both have been massive influences in my life. But my second year, we're in Atlanta, and I'm not going to use the kid's name because it wouldn't be fair to him. I'd watched a highlight tape of a high school quarterback that was as good as any highlight tape I'd ever seen, to the point where I got on the phone with Nick Saban and got on the phone with all my coaches around the country. Was like, you got to see this kid. And he was kind of under the radar. The recruiting thing hadn't really lit up for him yet, but this kid was amazing. He looked big too. Looked 6'3", 215, can make any throw you wanted. Just fantastic. We go to Atlanta for a regional camp, and he was terrible. He was scrawny. He was weak. Wasn't a great worker, couldn't control the ball, just really disappointing. And at the time, it was about me, because I was out there making calls on this kid's behalf, trying to change the landscape of quarterback development around the country. I'm on TV as a talking head. So I took it as an indictment on me that I was wrong, and I shredded this kid. Just absolutely humiliated him in front of all of his peers. All the recruiting guys are there on the sideline. I was in my room that night, and I was broken. I'd realized what I had done to this kid. And I had realized why it happened. Because it was about me. It wasn't about the kid. And I made a stake in the ground. One, I obviously went and asked for the kid's forgiveness, his parents, tried to handle that the best I could. But I stuck a stake in the ground, and I said, I'll never be that guy again. I'll coach kids hard, I'll demand, I have massive expectations. You guys don't know me. I mean, these kids, nobody expects more from them than me. But I put a stake in the ground, and I said, I will never risk a kid's mental and psychological health again with the power of my words. Now, there was a process that led up to that, but that was kind of the definitive moment where I said, hell no, I am not going to be that guy. Thank you for asking the question. Thank you, everybody.